So excited today to return to the sport of athletics, track and field. And we got a big name guest on the show today to learn about his career. Paris Olympian, competed in the 100-meter sprint, an esteemed career outside of the Olympics as well. We're talking a World University Games finalist in the 100 meters and a esteemed member of the Buckeyes, Ohio State. All-American, silver in the NCAA championships, member of the school record-holding 4x100 meter team, as well as a 2018 relay championship on that squad. And I'm so excited to learn about that and everything else in between. It's a pleasure to welcome off the podium, Duan Asemota. Duan, first of all, welcome to the program. Pleasure to have you on the show today.
That was probably like the best introduction I've ever gotten. So thanks for having me. Yeah, you did really good with the intro.
I try my best to give our guests a big head while we start. So then that way, if it goes to shit, you can at least remember the beginning. All right. So we're off to a good start. That's what I like to think there. I want to point out actually for our audio listeners right now, though, that check out the video interview with Duan, because Duan has got this amazing room set up. I just want to point this out straight away, where you've got race bibs, you've got so much memorabilia from your career behind you. I mean, when you step into that room, Duan, and you see all of that, like, does it just make that journey a little bit more special to kind of see it right there in front of you of everything that kind of you've achieved over the years?
Yeah, it's a great reminder. Like, I love it because, you know, some days I come and I'm like feeling down, but like because I'm in here every day, it won't always hit on a daily basis. But when I'm going through a tough period, you know, you look around, you're like, wow, I came really far. So I can't really just quit now. Because you look at, I have bibs from high school on here, my first year running, like all levels. So it's just so much motivation to keep going more than anything.
Do you have a favorite, or is that the obvious answer being the Olympic one, or
favorite bib? I don't know, man. I think my favorite bib, it might have been honestly my first Diamond League bib.
Right.
It was actually a Paris Diamond League bib, but that was like the first bib I got where I'm like, wow, I've seen this bib on TV. The Olympics one, I won't give everyone the cliche one because that's obviously my favorite, but second would be the Diamond League one for sure.
Is it more special now that you've actually got your name on it? Because since they've sort of switched to having your name on it rather than just a number, and you obviously got plenty there with numbers on behind you, but it must be a bit cooler when you see that picture of you in Paris and you just got like Asemota written on your chest there with Canada above it rather than just a bland number.
Yeah, no, I love the fact that my last name's on it now. It lets me know that I'm in the big races now because the big races don't usually have numbers; they have names. So it's great because also too, it's a quick way for people to search you up after the race is done by just having your bib number up there. So I love the fact that my bib's on front.
Yeah, I love that switch. I can't remember what year it was I did that at the Olympics. It might have been Rio, I think, might have been the first time they actually had it rather than a number, but it was sort of, very kind of, I love the way they kind of did that. Your journey though, Duan, just in track and field, I believe you started young but didn't really take it seriously until you were a little bit older. So sort of give us a background, sort of what sparked the interest into being incredibly fast and running very fast.
Yeah, what sparked the interest for sure was being in high school. Track and running was something everyone did, just particularly like every other sport. We had like track and field day at elementary school where once during the year, we'll have a period where we do a bunch of events. We race, you know, the winners from the school move on to the regional event that takes place in Oshawa, Ontario. And then after that's pretty much done. So going into high school, I wasn't really winning at my elementary school. So there was no interest for me to go to high school and do track and field. I was a basketball player during the time. But during my 10th grade year, my gym teacher encouraged me to tried out, was really fast and kept becoming fast. But at that point, it was just strictly talent. Didn't really have to work hard. So when the talent ran out, I had to work hard. And that's kind of what segued me to kind of being where I'm at right now. The talent just ran out.
What's it like when you realize the talent's run out? Like, that's an interesting way of putting it. Like, all of a sudden you go like, shit, I got to work hard. I can't just rely on my pure raw talent anymore.
Yeah, well, like when the talent runs out, you know, like the little bits you were doing to get by that was making you win races or come close or run fast times, like it's just not cutting it anymore. You realize that like you finally met the people who are just as talented as you. So now it's all about who wants to work harder. Or, you know, also too, you find people who are more talented than you, who actually are doing a little bit less to be better than you too. So it's twofold.
Is it a case of, you know, you mentioned you get to sort of year 10 when sort of that tap on the shoulder and that's sort of when you do it, but even playing basketball, I mean, I can imagine you're fast, right? Like that's, you talk about talent, like surely you understand that you're fast.
On the basketball court, I was not that fast because basketball is like about being quick, and I'm not quick. I'm fast. So there was never really a chance for me to just overwhelm people with speed. Like I was definitely like one of the faster ones there, but I wasn't blowing people away because the court you have to stop and turn around and turn and like go the other way. So speed doesn't really show too much on the way I approach the game. It was more so when I did the beep test and kind of just looked at it like this is an athletic built guy. Let's see what happens. It wasn't even on like he saw me like, I just smoked somebody in a race or I just blew someone away. He's just like, this guy looks like he can run a bit. Let's see what happens. And then I went to my first race at York University, won the meet, my very first one. So I didn't even know I was fast going into these meets too. Like my very first meet that I got pulled into, I was nervous. I was even the fast person on the team. There was some guy on the team who had made OFSA championships the year before. So I looked at it like, okay, maybe I can just do what he said, be a member of the relay team. I just ended up winning. After I won that 60, we went out there to the 100. I just didn't lose race after race after race after race. That's how I realized I was fast. It didn't just come like, because I lost growing up in elementary school in grade 8 in the 100 meter. I came fourth place. So I was like a fourth member on the relay team. I won shot put in grade 8. I did long jump, but there was kids at my school who were faster than me. So I'm like, why would I go to high school and run track with a bunch of people who were faster than everyone else in their elementary school? So it never really came to me from a confidence point until I actually started running and winning.
The point you made there, and I'd love you to clarify, when you say that you were quick, not fast, explain the differences for somebody who maybe think they're the same thing, but they're obviously not the same thing.
So a lot of that you usually find in like sports like football, sports like soccer, where they can go on a run for like about 20 meters and show you like some blistering pace, like Mbappe or like Tariq Hill in football. But like when it comes to maintaining speed, like it drops off very significant. That's why like they wouldn't be able to compete in something like 100 meter versus something like 40 meters. So that's just kind of different between quick and fast. I'm not really primarily a quick person. I'm not a quick starter. I'm not someone who's very, very agile, but once I get going, it's more like a freight train type of thing.
You mentioned you won the shot put. That's very different to sprinting. I mean, long jump, I can kind of see the correlation there, but shot put, how did that one come about?
Honestly, I don't know. I was a pretty strong guy. I worked with my dad in moving and delivery since I've been 10 years old, so I've always been pretty strong. But winning the shot put was just really random, and I didn't pick it up after. It was just one thing I did. But that just showed me how strong I was. Because I didn't have the build like the other guys I was going up against, but the natural strength was there.
One thing
Maybe
I read,
done decathlon or something. I don't know.
Maybe you could have been. You never know. One thing I read though about you, Duane, growing up, is that you loved space and you wanted to work for NASA. Tell me about that and how serious did you pursue that?
So when I was in grade 6, we had this project. It was about space, and you had to pick your planet on. You have to do like a whole project, the Bristol board, give a brief summary, all this different type of stuff. And mine was Saturn. And I was fascinated by the rings and the rocks around the rings, how the rings were in orbit. And it wasn't necessarily like, it was just like I had it give you that Jetsons kind of feel to it. So from then I was just intrigued in knowing about the whole solar system, Milky Way. Then I found out there's other solar systems and different stuff. And then I got really into like sci-fi movies like Interstellar, The Martian, just a whole bunch of different stuff. And I just always found it fascinating. I did a deep dive on space, like many YouTube searches, like for years and years and years. And working for NASA and dealing with like out of space research was something I wanted to do, like primarily leading into out of high school.
And did you pursue it? Was it something you actually like really looked into?
I didn't end up pursuing it. You see, the thing is, when you're an athlete, I feel like you're so limited on education. So I was really good at engineering too as well. Mm-hmm. I wanted to do engineering coming out of high school. I was really good with, I used to take apart computers and put them together at like the age of like 12. So I used to do stuff like that all the time. When I went to community college at first, because also too, like when I'm in high school, like I'm not doing stuff like this. So this stuff is not piquing my interest. It's English, math, science. It's not directly related. And I just didn't take an interest to it. So my average wasn't even good. I went to community college coming up, but they put together a pathway for me to be able to become an engineer. When I got to university, they're like, yeah, that's not going to happen. So you either pick between communications or social sciences. So I picked communications, so the bigger umbrella, but there was definitely a whole interest to it that got swept away with sport. And, when you go to certain schools, they want you ready and they don't want to keep you in the classroom. They want to keep you ready to run. And that's one of those situations that I came into transferring as a junior.
I'm still saying you're still young though, Dwayne. You can never say never to these things, right? Like, a couple more
Easy.
Olympics, a few medals, you could still go and you can go to Mars, you can go work for NASA, plenty of time, right? Come on.
It's gonna take me almost a whole Olympic cycle to get to Mars, so I don't know about that.
Hey, there you go. What about the Olympian who went to Mars? That's the story right there. There's a movie. Matt Damon will be playing you in like The Martian 2, essentially, I
I
think
think
probably.
we should get a screenwriter on this. It sounds like a really
Hey.
good movie.
Yeah, right. Like that would sell big bucks along the way. You
Yeah, maybe
mentioned
we, Mhm.
I was gonna say you mentioned growing up, sort of you were playing basketball as well. Was that sort of before that switch came to track and field? Were there aspirations for NBA, playing in the Olympics for Canada? Kind of like was that sort of like a progression that you were looking at that stage?
Yeah, for sure. Like the same year when I did the space project, I also did a project on who was my idol. At that point, it was Dwayne Wade. He had the same name as me. Big basketball fan. Miami Heat just won the championship that year. I played basketball for as long as I can remember, from when I could play a sport. So when I was in high school, I still played basketball hand in hand with track. But unfortunately, like in grade 11, right before the New Balance Nationals, I'm not sure if you know, if familiar with those
No.
that competition. It takes place in New York. It's annual. And right before like the Sunday, I was supposed to leave on the Wednesday, and the Sunday I broke my ankle playing basketball. So that whole year I was wiped out from track. And that was kind of the first year my mom kind of realized like, okay, we're kind of squandering opportunities with something that isn't that fruitful for you, because she said you're not the best, you're not LeBron James, but she said this track and field stuff seems like you're doing well. So she ended up having to go to the school and tell them after another injury where I slit my eye my eyelid and I chipped my tooth, that basketball is over, and if I'm going to be taking part in sports at this high school, it's only going to be track and field.
Wow. What's that like hearing that from your mum? I mean, it's honest, obviously, but I mean, it also it's I'm sure it's pretty hard to hear that coming from your mum that you're not LeBron James. Maybe you need to switch into something else.
Yeah, no, it was really tough, but I live in a Nigerian African parents culture. Like they're very blunt, so it doesn't catch you too off guard. Obviously, it catches you off guard sometimes, but at that point, like I was not happy because I loved it so much. I put so much time into it, passionate about it. I would go to the gym early before school and shoot around. I would stay late after school, shoot around. I would be watching basketball, playing the video games. It was just my life. So it kind of just made me kind of realize, although I love this, I have to really take up something that's going to take me further in life, unfortunately. And there was a lot of people playing basketball at the time too. So there wasn't a lot of people running track. So I looked at it as a easier pathway to success.
And in terms of that pathway, was it the Olympics? Was that the goal for you to make the Olympics through track and field?
No, the goal for me was really just to make it D1. That was my goal. It was never really to run. I think I wanted to make Team Canada at least once, but the Olympics wasn't something that I was thinking about making because I wasn't that good to begin with. So to have such a high aspiration when like I was there, I didn't even win OFSA that year. So how can I go and say I'm going to go to Olympics? So it was never on my radar until after university, when I seen the lay of the land and I realized, okay, you know what, this is something that I can actually obtain.
I did my math when it came to when you were born, Dwayne, because I always like to try and make weird connections on this show. You were born a month after Donovan Bailey won gold in Atlanta.
Really?
So I'm always trying to like connect, like, could this be some sort of like fate type of thing going on there with that? But when you start progressing through that and you're sort of going to university, you're doing well in that. Do you look to someone like a Donovan sort of as a national hero? And then obviously around about that time, it would have been Andre coming through and starting to sort of, get some attention. And are they people that kind of you aspire towards, or is it sort of other people that you're looking towards in sort of the track and field world to kind of help you in those goals that you're achieving?
Surprisingly, those are actually two guys I actually really look up to. Donovan, with the way our styles are, I actually didn't even know it was a month before. I thought it was born, but okay.
Yeah, I did the maths. You were August 96. He won gold in July 96. So there
Wow,
you go.
that's
You're
actually
there.
crazy.
Yeah,
Wow.
you're welcome.
But yeah, those are huge role models for me. Donovan, with the way he runs with his top end, is how I aspire to be able to run my top end speed. And I've been able to communicate with him, ask him for advice and pick his brain, which has been amazing. And he's someone who can always pick up the phone and call. Donovan's a great guy, vicious competitor, and he's one of one. And Andre is another guy who's been my mentor, but a little bit closer. I've got to see him up close because we've been in the same club, Speed Academy. I've seen him grow up. He went to the same junior college in Coffeyville. And also he transferred to university. I transferred to university. So he laid down the framework for me and how I was going to set my career, because he was the first person in my club to go to junior college, do 2 years there, transfer, go to university, and be successful as a pro. So it was pretty much the Andre DeGrasse blueprint. That's what Tony really called it. So, and also too, the stuff Andre did while he was in university, I was like jaw dropping at that while I was in junior college. Just like this guy's running 975 and 1958. Like I've watched those. I used to watch those videos on YouTube growing up too. And now like me and the guy are on the same team at the games, and I'm at Oakley with him, going to Puma House with him, and he's his third games, and now I'm watching him. So those are just guys you look up to, and they really set the standard for if you want to be great as a Canadian. Those are the heights you have to hit, becoming a world record or Canadian record holder, or becoming an Olympic medalist, because they really have transcended the way the world looks at Canadian track and field.
Which the thing I love about being part of this show, Duane, is that, you know, we're co-Canadian, Australian, and our Canadian co-host Colin, who's not with us at the time, we started back in Rio, so we were there sort of when Andre's, you know, really putting his name out there in the world, and sort of we've been on this journey. And as an Australian, it's maybe somebody we're not really going to pay too much attention to if I don't have that connection. So I've loved having Colin on this show, and we actually were sort of on air, as much as we want to say, recording an episode back in Tokyo when he won the 200 meters, and to see Colin's reaction and kind of have that level of pride, because Colin's a big track and field guy. He has a big photo of Donovan Bailey behind him when we're recording. So it's great to kind of see that journey, and obviously to realize what somebody like Andre means to people in the sport, as well as the entire country of Canada as well.
Yeah, for sure. That moment, Andre winning, is a huge moment for Canadian track and field, because the issue of relevance that we just hate that we don't get acknowledged by the world. And we've had great talent over the years. We've been a decent sprinting country over the years. Obviously not as dominant as USA and Jamaica, but we've had our eras where we've done really well. So for Andre to get that gold in that 200 meter, it really means a lot to all of us just coming up in the program, because it lets us know anything's possible.
One of these programs I'd love you to talk a little bit more about. I read the Toronto Speed Academy. I mean, this automatically just sounds awesome. It's just something that I want to be a part of. But tell us a bit about what the Toronto Speed Academy is and how helpful that has been for your career.
So yeah, the Speed Academy is actually based in Pickering, Ontario. It's like GTA sub-region of Ontario anyway. So, but it's just a club started by a dad, and they wanted to find to run track with their kids, and it was Tony Sharp, Olympic medalist. And he really just had a dream to connect athletes from going to high school in Canada to university in the States. That was his sort of dream he did. And he brought this red uniform, bold attitude, and everyone was just performing really well. And we kind of swept the country with talent. We had athletes making the World Junior team, the provincial teams, Olympic teams, and all the athletes that have came up that have been a product of just the way Tony Sharp set up everything, you know, getting us to be able to be in a situation where we can develop for 4 years and come back and have a chance to be pro, or just have a career. He was the only one at the time doing that. I think at the time, what you see with a lot of clubs, I was in Speed Academy since I've been 16, they kind of bring you up, and then at the end of the road, it's kind of like off the plank. Here you go. Either you go to university or you don't. Like, he makes sure everybody goes to either D1, D2, NIAA, U Sports. He just makes sure you continue your education in any way, shape, or form. So it's more than just track and field. It's education. It's excellent. It's consistency. You've had guys like Andre DeGrasse, me, Nicholas Morales, Miriam Abdul-Rashid. Some of the brightest talent in Canadian history, up and coming, has come from the Speed Academy, and with Tony Sharp and his guidance, setting the template for people to just really go to school. Because all the Ohio State stuff you see behind it means a lot more. It's part of a community, a family. It's not just about track and field at that point. When I went back this weekend and I was honored, it reminded me of that. And I would have never known that if it wasn't for Tony. I would have just been some other person who runs 10-0 and maybe just resides in Canada.
And could you have ever imagined that you would end up at such a big school as Ohio State? Because, I mean, even as an Australian, I know how big of a deal Ohio State is. So, I mean, that must have been pretty special to end up there, of all places.
No, I never in my wildest dreams thought I was going to end up at Ohio State. When I was in grade 12, not only was I getting ready to go to community college, but I was filling out applications for a college local. My mom said, if the track thing doesn't work out in case, just, apply locally. So I went from applying to like St. Lawrence College in Toronto. I think it was at Brock or Niagara region. So now I'm going to Ohio State. But like, it's just so crazy because every single step along the way, I was just so focused on the next, that when it became on the horizon, it was like a slow horizon. It wasn't just flash, boom, we're at Ohio State. But when you look back, it looks like that's how it happened. Because I went from being at one place to being at the biggest schools. But realistically, just pushing myself every single day gets me in random places that I reflect and I'm just like, I don't even know how I got here. Like the Olympics. I'm just like putting your head down for a couple months, couple years, just you look up sometimes and you're like, wow, I didn't know I was here.
That is such an inspirational way of looking at life, though, Dwayne, because, like, I mean, that's sometimes what you just happen in life. You just find yourself in the most random of places and you don't know where it's going to take you. And that's sort of taking you, as you said, to Ohio State, the Olympics, things like that. And it's just, I mean, is that like a message you like to try and put out there if you're speaking to kids at school or you're speaking to young up-and-coming sprinters? Because you never know what sort of one step can take you in a direction toward, basically, and looking at it that way.
Yeah, it's so hard to say that to all the kids because that's exactly what I heard when I was a kid. Yeah, just work hard, you keep your head down, you stay disciplined. Like it sounds so boring to say. Like it's something that you can't really explain to people. But when you adopt the mindset and you do it in everything you do, you get far. So I always encourage people the most thing I say over and over again is listen to your coach, work hard, and don't cheat yourself. Maybe that's saying that in a different way. I just try to say it in a different way because younger generation, they really want to be wowed with stuff. And realistically, to get to wherever we're going, there was no wow factor. It's boring, hard days. There's days you don't want to move. There's days you do want to move. There's days you have that are great. There's days you have that are not great. But what doesn't change is the work ethic, the discipline, and the diligence.
Is there much of a cultural change as a Canadian going to an American college? Because obviously Canada, the US are very similar, but there's also big cultural differences. But did you find it culturally different to all of a sudden end up in America and kind of around a bunch of American students and things like that versus, as you were saying, with maybe you might have ended up at a college in Canada instead?
Yeah, it was a complete culture shock for me when I went to community college. Everyone talked different. The mannerism is different. How people problem solve is different. A lot of stuff is different. I had to get used to it fast. At 17 years old, moving to a different country, very intimidating, being around a lot of other older males. But it was tough because you're Canadian. Everyone says you talk funny. They make fun of you, ask you if you live in an igloo. They ask if you know Drake. They ask you to say certain words to kind of pique your pronunciation, just so I'm sure you get as well. So it's crazy because you look at it like we are so close, but then they look at it like, no, you're like a foreigner to us. So you really are reminded a lot in America that you are Canadian. No one lets you forget that.
Yeah, I lived in New Zealand for a while and people think Australia and New Zealand are the same place basically. But you quickly realize that, there are big differences and, sort of it sort of has that. I mean, that whole experience, I sort of touched on some of that, obviously in the introduction, some of the success that you had with that. Do you look back now at your time there and kind of that success and as a real driving factor towards what ultimately would lead to an Olympic appearance? I mean, was this sort of the moment where you as a sprinter came out of yourself and shone and was able to kind of take that next step to making an Olympic Games?
The step I took to making Olympic Games was my senior year of Ohio State. Coming into that year, my personal best in the 100 meter was 10:45. So at this point, I'm like, okay, let's wrap this thing up, get a degree, and we'll go about our wing and find a job. I went to a meet that I didn't even bring my spikes to. I forgot them. Teammate asked them, I was too scared to tell my coach that I didn't bring my spikes. I asked the teammate, hey, can I borrow your spikes? I left mine up at the hotel. So using his spikes, go to the race, run my first 10:2, 10:28. So I'm like, wow, that's pretty fast. Maybe 10:28 can get me somewhere in Canada. Canada's not that fast. Maybe 10:28 can get me somewhere. Then we fast forward to the end of the season. I go to Big Ten Championships. I ran 10:22. So I said, oh, wow, this thing seems like it's picking up. Maybe we can do this. When I left school, got a call from Team Canada, joined the relay program, started high performance. That's when things started to click in that last year. Because before then, I wasn't running anything that was anything close to being something a pro can run.
So what was that? Was it simply the shoes? I mean, kind of what do you think it was that all of a sudden makes you run 0.2 of a second faster to kind of be on the radar then for Team Canada?
That was the first time I ever had to actually work hard, really hard, because they had a travel list at Ohio State and you had to try to make the travel list. And I wasn't even making the conference team at Ohio State indoors. That's how poor I was performing. So it really was just week after week having to stay home. And I would go home some weekends because I was so frustrated. My teammates are in LA, my teammates are in Florida, and I'm at school. And you're at school if you're not running fast. So every weekend they kept me at school, I would go in and just work hard the whole week, just trying to make that travel roster time after time again. And because it just became so cumulative that I was so committed, and I had never been committed at something this long. Because after I got on the travel roster, I wanted to stay on the travel roster. I didn't want to have another weekend when I was home. So cumulatively, that's what drove me to raising up my performance to a level that I didn't even realize it was high, because I was kind of BSing it the whole entire time.
Which I mean, I love it when we talk to track and field athletes, and particularly say like the field athletes, we talk to somebody like in a high jump who, they've got that literal bar that they're trying to get and obviously achieve that. But for a sprinter, obviously there's that time that you're always trying to do. And you said the word there in your last answer, frustration, that I can imagine it is very frustrating when you're working your ass off. You feel like you are doing everything you can, but then the clock's not maybe reading what you think you're capable of. I mean, just how frustrating does that get when you're in those levels of you're pushing for a 10-2 and then you're obviously trying to break the 10? Like, I can imagine just that level of frustration sometimes in your sport is always there.
It's so frustrating because you can do so many things right in the 100 meters, and one thing wrong can blow everything up. And you can do a bunch of things wrong in the 100 meters, but then you can do one thing right and things can go well. It's a constant evolution of trying to make things perfect or as consistent as possible. And when you think about time, that's what is frustrating. It's why can't I get the time? So what the best thing to do is think about the race and what happened. That's why race analyzation, race patterning, race modeling, all that stuff is very important, because the time does get annoying. I remember in 2023, I think I ran 10-1 like 7 times. And I'm just like, running 10-1 7 times, like, this is annoying. Like, and I'm watching the race. I'm like, where can I make up time? Like, how can I keep getting time? And I just threw out the race model out the window. I didn't even get any faster. And I had to sit back. My coach had to scale it back. He's like, listen, the only way to get faster is to approach things from a different way. So yes, for younger athletes, newer athletes, the answer is never in the time. It's never in the time. It's always in the preparation, the race model, and the execution.
I love hearing about race modeling, because again, it's such a quick event, the 100 meters, that it's almost hard to fathom that you can race model a 10-second event, right? This isn't a marathon. This isn't even a 1,500 meters. Like, it's over in almost the blink of an eye. So that race model is fascinating.
Let's say, for example, for 100 meters, you've obviously seen your fair few 100 meters. How would you break down a race model of what you think a 100-meter runner would be thinking? And I'll kind of fill in the gaps for you.
Oh, that's a great question, Duane. I mean, I would assume that once you're out of the blocks, it's what about step count? Like, how many getting your stride into it to make sure, and sort of following a race pattern that way. And I can imagine there's such a mental barrier of, I've made a good start, I've made a shit start, and you've got to try and block that out and try and do all that within 10 seconds, essentially. I mean, I don't know how close I am to that, but
so for example, like, even where the way you started, it starts 10 steps ahead. It starts from the blocks and the setup of the blocks.
Right.
Setup of the blocks, having a good setup that actually works for you to accelerate down the track with triple extension. That's the first setup. Then you have to factor in, like, obviously how you load the blocks in your set position. People have cues for that. How you load the blocks in terms of shoulder being over the line. Some people like to lean forward. Some people like to lean back. There's certain stuff like that. You see hurdles, for example, they're very hunched over the line, versus sprinters are very kind of neutral over the line. So that's where the first thing it starts. Then you have your starts when you cue. For example, like for people with their first motion, you see Christian Coleman. Some people have like a leg sweep, an arm drive. You need your first movement to cue you off to run. That's kind of your domino effect. From then on, the race repetition you get from your acceleration is what you want to stay within, making sure that you're driving for the correct amount of distance, because coming up early is a huge part about track and field. You see people like Elaine Thompson come up around 60 meters. People like Christian Coleman, they come up a little bit earlier. Fred Curley drives for longer. That's all how people build their power. And then when you come up, that's when you transition out of your power, and the energy you kind of carried in your acceleration, where you're building, because you're coming off a starting block. So you're building. Then you now take flight with your top end position. This is where you see where the sprinters separate themselves, because this is where it becomes technique, like you said, stride pattern, and stuff like that, strength and power. So you see, as the race goes on, you see people start to die off. So you have to put together a plan to be able to get you from point A to point B with dying off as little as possible. So you have to know a lot about yourself, what your strengths are, what your strengths and weaknesses are, where you think to be world class that you have to improve in certain areas, which can affect the way you train for certain parts of what race. And the primary thing is being able to put together over and over again, because the best guys, the key is they know the race model. The Fred Curleys, the Noah Lyles, the Christian Colemans, the Kashane Thompsons. It's something they repeat all the time, and they can do it with their eyes closed, which is why they get consistent performances.
And all in 10 seconds. That's it. It sounds like so like, and then it's just, I've never heard it quite described that way, Duane. That's incredibly fascinating.
It's a lot of muscle memory, just like anything. If you do power clean or anything like that, it's happening like that. But you've cued those things. You've cued how to load the bar, how to explode, how to catch. You just put it together, and that's how racing is. You have your acceleration days, you have your mid-speed development days, you know what I mean? And you have your overspeed days where you work on how to keep yourself in proper efficiency for the whole entire race so you don't get tired. So everything just breaks down into form, and on race day is a day where you get to put it together. And the ones who know how to put together, they're usually very excited on race day.
It also comes down to that mental preparedness. And one thing that a lot of people love and are very entertained by, the 100 meters is that swagger, that bravado that so many of the athletes sort of bring to it. But I mean, I guess, is that more of a case of, like, if a Noah Lyles is out there, doing Yu-Gi-Oh cards and things like that, like helping his preparation, or is that also a case of trying to psych you out to kind of like get into your skin? Like, how much is that for him versus trying to psych you out, if that makes sense?
Honestly, most of it is really just intimidation. At the end of the day, you want to overwhelm people with your presence in the 100 meter. You want to let everyone know, I'm the guy. This is my day. You guys are not beating me. Some people can show that in different ways. Some people don't talk to show that. Some people just, like, you have Leslie Tabogos who can just go out there and show you. But then you have some people who need that adds to their bringing their race together. And that's what it really comes down to. 100 meters, it's a macho man sport. It's the pissing contest. You're trying to see who is the fastest person out of all of you guys. So if I come in here and think I'm the fastest person, I'm going to spread my wings a little bit, and I'm going to poke my chest out a bit to let everyone know, hey, this is my day. This is my thing, right? Because now that I do that, if I'm able to, this is the psychological part that you're talking about. If I can get into his head and he believes I'm the man, when we're around 60, 70 meters and I'm going past him, he's going to give up. He's not going to go a little bit more. It's those little things, right? So you see some people overly try to avoid it. I don't want to go talk to him. I want to be on the other side of the track. The key is to embrace it, because when it comes down to you guys on the line, it comes no matter what it is. But the less you bring it into your airspace, the more it's not on your mind when you get to the race. You can be the type of person like I am. If it's Noah Lyles, Fred Curley, have that belief in yourself that you can do it. But not everybody has that. And that's kind of where the players come in when you get to the top level. It's really fairly much about confidence and execution.
And do you ever have a day where maybe something like that comes out of you a little bit more? Like all of a sudden you just wake up and you're just like, I'm feeling good, I'm going to win today. Like, and you can bring that sort of to that maybe you wouldn't have done on another day, for example.
Oh yeah, for sure. There's meets I get to, I'm like, oh, it's over today. I feel good. The body's loose. I'm doing the strides. I like the way I'm touching the track. Everything feels good. No restrictions. Nothing's tight. Those times, or sometimes you wake up in the morning, just like for you, when you're going to go to work or to do anything, or even just to work out, and you got a good night's rest, like, ooh, like, I feel like I got a little bit more to give today. So that's kind of what we feel as athletes.
I'd love to get to that qualification moment moving forward to Paris, because I read an interesting fact that a year out from Paris, it looked likely that you might not even be there. That's maybe not necessarily would have been on your radar, but then things sort of got switched up and you focused on that. So I'd love to hear that story, like sort of where were you a year before Paris and kind of what changed up that all of a sudden, July 2024, you're on a plane, you go into France and you go into your first Olympics.
Yeah, this was tough. I mean, for me, a lot of people know this, but in 2023, we had a relay team that didn't qualify for the final. I was the person supposed to be running on that leg. The day before that race, a couple of days before that race, I had information that I had to go home because of a family emergency. So the opportunity that I had for all year that I worked for was to be able to run the end of the relay when Andre chose to run the 200 meters was pulled under me. So as the team's running, I'm in the hotel room and I'm just watching us collapse. And I felt a lot of responsibility for that. And that was a moment where also people could have got to know me too as well. And it spoke a lot about the depth in the 100 meters. Coming to the next year, I said, I need to work hard for my opportunity to not just run on the end of the relay, but to run the 100 meters. So I asked myself, what are you willing to do to make that happen? And I had so much fire in me because of not being able to run on the end of the relay the year before, with us underperforming, with me only running 10-1s, with them saying there wasn't enough depth in Canadian track and field. A lot of people were saying that there was no help to be had. And we were all running fast. So I really wanted to be overwhelmingly great. So I said, you know what? To get on this 100-meter team, I have to take someone off. either Aaron, Andre, Brendan, or Jerome. I said I have to go pedal to the metal. So all year, what I try to do is put together my best performances I could whenever I could. And it landed me in the top 50 that got me in the quota to make the championship. So from a year out, it wasn't most likely because I was an alternate on a relay team that didn't even do well. So now a year later, I'm starting for the 100 meters in Canada. The time in between spent was really just me believing in myself and really just not listening to absolutely anybody. People had opinions that I was done in my career. My best days were at Ohio State and I was over. People had opinions that Andre, Aaron, Jerome, Brendan are the only ones who can run the country. But I just stayed in within me and my coach, stuck to my faith, my family, and I just every day made it happen. And when we got to LSU and I opened up the 100 meter and I ran 998 and it was 3.4 win, that's when I knew I'm like, okay, I'm here to play this year. Like I'm not here to just be even just on alternate on the relay team. I want it all. So that's kind of what took me through the year, but definitely not missing out on that world championship experience in 2023 at Budapest was something that was directly the reason why I had to be as good as I was the next year.
Just fuels that hunger, essentially, to kind of drive towards that. You touch on sort of the element of making the relay team, but then also just making the 100 meters. I mean, sort of, is there a process when it comes to you're aiming to just be on a relay team versus the individual? Like if you're selected for one, can you go for the other? Can you explain sort of that process of, say, making the relay team versus the individual 100 meters?
I mean, of course, like being a sprinter, you always want to make the 100 meters. That's what your goal should be. 100 meters, 200 meters, whatever you shoot for that's priority number one, because that's what's going to pay the bills. Relay is great and all, but it does not pay. It's not going to get me in the diamond leagues. It's not going to get me brand deals. It's not going to help me get better as an athlete ultimately. So I always focus on 100 meters. As far as the relay goes, we have a really great coach in Glenroy Gilbert. We have a really great relay program that's been tenured, and it's been shown how great the way we go about things versus other countries. So what you have to do is just hone your skills with your zone passing, leaving on time, not leaving late, all the stuff that the US do that we don't do. We just try to make sure we do those things right. So you kind of just tip your hat on all the skills you're displaying and hope your number gets called. But it's not always dependent on speed. And that's just what relay is at the highest level. It's about position suitability.
Because if I'm not mistaken, you weren't confirmed on the Olympic team until only a few weeks out from the Olympics. Is like it was very close until the actual games, right?
Yeah, no, I made the relay team. I'm not relay team. I made the Olympic team like the day of the very first day the team came out. So when they first announced the team after the trials, I was named for the 100 meter 4x1. I just think that initially it wasn't announced as that. I think it just got cleared up after.
Because that's one thing I'd love you to clarify is that I remember sort of going into the Olympics. We sort of have a thing on this show, Duan, called Team OTP. So if you're a guest on this show, you become a member of Team OTP. So congratulations, you are now on Team OTP when you go to LA. But we'd had Brendan and Aaron on the show previously. And I can't remember whether it was Brendan or Aaron. One of them sort of in the lead up, we saw at least it appeared like they hadn't been selected. And then all of a sudden they were in the team and obviously went on to be in that 4x100. So I don't know if I'm just misinterpreting this, but were one of them not...
So basically, I'll clarify how it went. So basically, last year at the Canadian Olympic Trials, not Canadian Olympic Trials, the Canadian Trials in 2023 in Langley, BC, Brendan ran a standard of 10 flat. That's the Olympic standard outright. So coming into this year, he was the only person who had it. Aaron was on points ahead of me, and then Andre was the next one on points. So those are the three. Brendan's world ranking wasn't ahead of mine during the time, and they had a pool of 4 people to pick from, and I was in the pool. And based on how I finished ahead of him at nationals and how I performed, that's what helped me get the spot. But initially, it was kind of his to have because he had the standard. There's 2 ways to qualify for the Olympics. There's outright the standard, which is 10 flat, or you can be top 50 in the world or next best, depending on how much people in your country are ranked within the quota. So I made mine within the quota and with the consistency I had all year and what I showed at nationals as well.
So then in terms of when you're on that plane to Paris, you're going to compete in the 100 meters. Are you aware at that time that you are or aren't on the 4x100, or is that decided in Paris?
That's always going to be decided in Paris. That's always going to be decided game time decision. So you just hope for the best. And luckily for me, I had the 100 meter focused on, so I didn't worry about it too much. After the 100, obviously, you had relay practice, decisions got made, and I didn't end up getting picked for the relay. So it always comes into fruition at the games because Andre was a little bit hurt at the Olympics. We had a little bit of struggles here and there, so things can get juggled. Because even last minute, last year at the World Championships, that decision was made last minute as well. Because Andre was a game time decision whether he was going to run or not run, and he ended up saying, "Yeah, I'm not going to run."
Which I
So
want
you
to.
have to get through the whole championship, especially because we have guys who actually run individual events. We don't just have people who sit for relays. We have to also see how their events go too.
I'm going to ask you separately about your 100 meters, but we're on the topic right now then. So I then got to ask a question then. So why aren't you picked for that 4x100? Because if I'm looking at the times and if I'm looking at how the heats went, you did better than Aaron. So why aren't you on that 4x100 squad and why aren't you an Olympic gold medalist right now, Dwayne?
Okay, so I'll be honest, and I'm only going to be honest because I love Glenn Roy. He's the head coach. So I'm not going to make it seem like, oh, this and that. And I have respect for the guys on the team. We were at the London Diamond League. I talked a little bit about you when we first got on the call about the injury I'm recovering from right now. Mm-hmm. Let's just say that was a really bad day for me. And I picked a bad day to have a bad day at the Diamond League because GB killed us on the inside. Louis Hincliffe, the person who won the NCAA championships, he absolutely destroyed me on the inside. And I ran slow that day as well. So going to be in the Olympics, it wasn't a great sign of confidence in him to see that I didn't have a great leg and I didn't handle both exchanges the best. So going in, he had to stick to his guns. And I don't blame him because I didn't show him my best on that day. Now, was I feeling better? Of course I was. But you can only go off what you see. And what I showed him up that year, I don't think it was enough to convince him to put me on that team ahead of anyone else.
Which I'm not drawing this. We're not a negative show. I don't like to focus on the negatives, Dwayne. But I mean, like
I like to hear opinions, so it's okay.
But it's more of a case of just how then does that feel? You say you picked a bad day to have a bad day, and ultimately it cost you an Olympic gold medal. Because if you were on that team, Olympic gold medalist right now, Dwayne. I mean, it must be extra like bad on the bad, essentially looking back on it.
I mean, it is, but then I look at it. What am I going to do now? Like, at the end of the day, the guys won. And me being a big basketball player growing up and not being the best on some of those teams, I just have appreciation for when the team does well. I'm not the type of guy. Of course, I was mad. I was mad for sure. But when the team wins, you can't really be mad because what are you going to say? I would have done better. Well, it doesn't matter. We won anyway. At the end of the day, that's just how it goes. And I'm happy for those guys because everyone has their own experiences. My career is not over yet. I could still go get another gold medal at multiple major championships, if not worlds, Olympics coming up. So I just try to look more forward than behind me. It sucks. It definitely sucks. And when I get asked these questions every time, everyone asks, where's your gold medal? Or, you went for the relay, or how did it go? It's tough answering those questions, but I have so much respect for our program and the guys that they put in and the clinic that they put on that day. And they weren't even having a great championships. Jerome wasn't having a great season. And, for them to have that moment where they were on top of the world for all the stuff that I saw them go through firsthand, I felt like they all deserved it. I didn't think it was about time. I think it was about, they had their moments over the years at the World Championships, World Relays, the Olympics. So to just complete it and get that moment for them, like I was just so incredibly happy for them that I just really didn't think about myself.
Great answer. I love that. And plus, let's be honest, it should be like the NBA, right? Like, sort of like if somebody plays like 2 games during a season, they'll get like a championship ring. You help qualify the team, right? So like you're on the roster, you should be getting one anyway.
Could have got one, but the Olympics, I guess maybe they have a shortage on production of gold medals. Maybe they just didn't want to give it up. But, at the end of the day, I talked to Glenn Roy today. We saw each other today at the facility. And, he always said, like, medal or not, you're always still part of the team. And as much as I don't like the fact that he says that, because I'm like, you just give me a medal if I'm part of the team. But, I mean, he has a point.
In terms of the individual event, I mean, you narrowly miss out on making it out of the heat by 0.1 of a second. I mean, was your goal going into that make the final, medal, like kind of like, do you set goals or is it kind of a case of you just see kind of what's going to happen throughout the heats and everything that comes forward with it?
Yeah, no, going in, I didn't know how I was going to be able to do. I wasn't feeling like myself for so many months leading into the games because, at Nationals I performed so poorly. That was like when I was peak not feeling the greatest. I ran 10.2s. I was all over the place. I finished 4th. I was running 10.07 a couple weeks before. So going in, I just wanted to make sure I was healthy. And going into after training camp, I felt really good in my preparation. I felt really good with the way I was starting and everything. The race just comes in the Olympics, and it's just a different race. And, I didn't have my coach there with me to help settle me down and let me know the basics, remind me of the fundamentals, the basics of stuff that I do well. I overthought a lot going into it, but this is all stuff that happens at your first games. But my goal was to make it to the next round, was not to just make the first round. 10-17, you see what I run. Like, that's one of my worst times of the year. So I know I had a really bad performance and I picked a bad day to it to have that performance. But I mean, being on the Olympic stage and parents being there, family watching back home, it's something I just try to not focus on at the moment. But of course, my goal going in is to perform a lot better. I didn't run a good race at all. Within the first 3 meters, I stumbled coming out blocks and almost gave up during the race. The race was not a good representation. And I can only say that because people have seen my body of work. People have seen what I've done when I'm remotely having decent races. So, it's not a great experience, but this is what motivates me for LA, because that race right there was one of the worst races of my career at the worst time. And, it's really embarrassing to, come from that. Of course, you have a lot of people tell you made the Olympics. It's such a big deal. But 10-17, I was like a hair of making the next round. If I just run my seasonal best, I can, do really well at this meet. So, it just teaches me being ready at the right time matters the most than just running fast all year. So now when I see athletes targeting major championships, I get it now.
Do you take a moment on that day to just be like, fuck it, I ran a terrible race. I'm shitty. I'm not happy. I'm just going to go eat to McDonald's. I'm going to get drunk. Do you just take a moment after all that training to kind of just have almost like a depressed day? Like, fuck it, I'm getting drunk. I'm eating Macca's.
Oh, for sure. That's exactly what happened. So, because I was at the games and, it's just so much before preparation. When it was over, I was just happy it was over. Like, relieved it was over. Like, yeah, I know I was going to have a next round or not, but it was over. Went out to the Canada house. My cousin who came down to Paris, drinks all night, came back home, 3 a.m., took a day off, then got ready for relay and preparation, because it gets a lot. For me, like, I can only lock in and have all this tension on me for so long, and I just need to have a day to do exactly what you're saying sometimes.
Which I love hearing that, because it's sort of, it's always that level of an athlete that, in any sport, that the highs are high, but the lows are low. And any human being has a bad day, emotionally, physically, anything. And sometimes you just need to have a comfort day. You need to feel sorry for yourself. You need to eat bad, watch Netflix, get drunk, do whatever you do. And if you're at the Olympics, you're literally in that unique position where you're in one event, it's over in 10 seconds. That's it. It's not like a basketball game where you can come out the next day and try and win that. Your Olympics is literally over in 10 seconds. So I can imagine, of all the people who want to go out and get drunk and feel sorry for themselves, Duane, you're up there at the top of the list, and I applaud you for it.
Yeah, and honestly, like I said, there's a lot of athletes who do that. A lot of athletes, your favorite athlete does that because it gets too much. It really does.
Which, do you then, after all of that, did you get involved in any of the Olympic atmosphere, like afterwards, a village life, sort of, were you able to kind of take in any of that at all through the disappointment and kind of live up to that Olympic experience?
Yeah, one thing about me, I'm for sure going to enjoy myself. I work too hard to not enjoy myself. I am at the Olympics. I'm going to look at everything in between this relay. I'm going to see whatever free thing I can get and meet whoever I can meet and take pictures whoever I can take with and get all the souvenirs I can get. I did all that as much as I could within the time that I had. Didn't get a chance to watch too much other events, but I did everything you said. I went and got a Corona bottle from the Corona thing, and I traded pins with people, and I had a bunch of muffins. I did everything I wanted to with the game. So I did not leave a stone unturned, because I knew I didn't want to let my experience of the games just culminate to my 100 meters or not winning the relays. I wanted to have an experience. That was the main thing I wanted to have, because, 4 years, you want to just take a chance to soak it all in.
You answered my muffin question. I'm glad you were they were as good as everybody said. Everybody keeps saying yes on this show,
good.
But
honestly, they were good. 10, 11 out of 12.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. Like, see, that's the thing. People are really muffin people, so they're a little bit harder critics.
True. Very true, right? We need to follow these muffin influencers. I'm sure that's a thing in 2024, right? Well, you talk about like bumpy. Who'd you meet? Who was the most famous person you got a photo with in the village?
I got to see the girl who won the all-around gymnastics that beat Simone Biles, and I got the flip phone selfie of her. So that was really cool. I met all the people like Tara Davis, a bunch of other people. Me and Noel Lyles, we were talking shit to each other because I told him after World Relays, I thought you said we weren't going to win. First of all, why aren't you running? You need to just focus on yourself, all this different stuff like that. I'm always going to be the trash talk on the team, like the Draymond Green guy on the team. because I gotta let these guys know, like, you can't just talk about stuff in interviews and then just go scot-free after. Yeah, we're gonna talk to you on social media, but I want to talk to you in person too. Luckily I couldn't talk
Nice.
to him because he had the mask on,
Ah,
and
right.
he had a chaperone with him. So I'm like, okay, you know what? Let me not bring COVID back to Canada. So yeah.
It's funny. I have to say that of all the when I was in Paris, I in the media center, there was the day that Team USA Athletics did their press conference, and I was walking, I think, to the bathroom as they were walking in. So Noah Lyles sort of walked past me through, and I'm just kind of like, oh, yeah, it's Noah Lyles. That's pretty cool. I didn't go up and get a selfie or anything, but I was within the vicinity of him, Dwayne, so I'll take that. So, did you do closing ceremony? Did you do the closing ceremony as well?
Yeah, I did closing ceremonies, ton of pictures with the guys. Great moment, great time. That was my first real Olympic moment because, I didn't get to do opening ceremonies. Obviously, the track went by such a blur, but yeah, the closing ceremony was great. Just seeing the rings is really just what iconic, like the iconic of it. And, watching them at home and now you're here. Like I'm getting messages while I'm there saying people are like, I see you on TV. And it was just a big party, end of the Olympics. And it was something I'll never forget for the rest of my life, honestly.
You talk about that level of sort of, the disappointment of it being such a big meet, but I'm sure also you touched on your family being there, but a lot of maybe your friends and people like that who are able to finally see what you do, because I'm sure, they're maybe not closely following like the Diamond League or some of these other events. So are you all of a sudden you're checking Instagram or something like that and you're getting like, oh, this is John from high school who I haven't talked to in years and he's seen me on TV, as you said. I mean, what's that sort of level like?
Man, Instagram during the games was insane. Like, just like you said, right? From high school, elementary school, teachers, people who I grew up with, my DM was packed every single living second of the games. Like, everyone wants to know how it is, and just people probably just making sure that you didn't change and act different, and that you still message them back and certain stuff like that. But it was just overwhelming. Like at least like 70, 80 DMs notifications a day.
Wow.
So
Wow.
it was
Do
it's
you
a lot.
reply to them all, Dwayne, or do
I
you sort
do.
of, you do?
I
Okay, all
do.
right.
Because you want to know
Okay.
why I was that kid messaging Andre Grass, hoping he would reply me back and he said say something to me. So I don't want to. Whoever messages me back, like as long as it's not spam, I'm gonna take some time to reply. But it took some time to reply for sure.
Because it's one of those things, like, it's a great thing you point out with that, because we're all, kids at one point, and we've all got our idols, and depending on what period of life you live in, you write them a letter or you message them on Instagram. But it's those moments you remember, like Andre DeGrasse at one point signed a shoe when I was 10, and then all of a sudden he's your teammate. Like, we remember that. And there could be some kid who you're their hero. So if you've replied to them all of a sudden, they're going like, fuck, Duan Asemota replied to me, like, Mum, look at this, look at this. So I like hearing that.
Yeah, I encourage all athletes to try to be accessible because we have the ability to inspire. And Andre Grass inspired me to make the Olympics. So did Donovan Bailey, people like that, right? So you never, and I don't think he probably doesn't even know that. And honestly, I probably wouldn't tell him that. But
He doesn't listen to the show. It's fine.
Yeah, you might watch it, but I don't know if I post, you might watch. But yeah, no, you just really just try to make yourself accessible. It's really important to just be personable and connect with your audience.
And now that we're recording this, obviously, a couple of months after the Olympics have ended, I mean, are you sort of embracing that? You touched on obviously going back to Ohio to sort of be honoured there with sort of that level of things, but are there school visits, things like that? Sort of you're getting a lot of phone calls right now to go back to the hometown to kind of talk about these Olympic experiences?
Yeah, I'm definitely booked and busy. I'm booked and busy for sure. Every day I'm doing something. I think this weekend I'm going to Ohio for a Bengals game too. So I'm back in Ohio
Right.
2 weekends in a row. So booked and busy for now. I have another event at the town of Ajax, where that's my hometown, at the end of the month, and I have another event in Montreal. We're going to get our rings at Parliament. There's always it's like I'm still on the Olympic tour, but it was definitely tough after when I got back from the games to really own being an Olympian and be proud of it, because I was so underwhelmed with my performance. And people come up to me, were so elated, and told me to be so proud of myself for finishing, I don't know, was it 29th at the Olympics? And I'm just like, I ran my worst race of the season. So it took a long time for me to really come around to accepting how the honor of Olympian is. And it's not about how you do when you get there. It was hard for me too, especially with the guys doing so well and coming back for the gold medal. And I didn't come back with anything at all. So it was tough for the first month to adjust to just being proud of myself and not feeling like I blew it.
And it's also that hunger then, back to what we were talking about before, and you touched on LA, that can drive you then towards 2028. And Obviously, you said you're recovering for a bit of an injury, but I'm guessing that's the goal, pushing towards a second Olympics in 2028?
Yeah, I want to be at the top of my game with the next Olympics. I want to be really, really good. And I know I'm going to be really, really good because in the last 2 years, I've gotten really exceptionally well with just digging down and getting focused. And now that I've learned so much from my competitors, I've gotten an exposure to international competition and the Olympics. I'm really more hungry now for more, and more is really great ahead of me.
I before we let you go, Dwayne, I love reading random things like hobbies and things like that. And I'm just reading here on one of your bios, hobbies playing basketball. We've touched on space. You like to watch UFC, but you've also got written here playing FIFA and dogs as well. So, is it a case of just sitting around playing FIFA with a couple of dogs by your side? Is that kind of like a perfect Saturday night for you, if we're sort of asking?
I'll have the dog beside me. I like to play with the dog in between games or certain stuff like that. But I love dogs. My dog that I had at university got stolen off my porch. That's a really sad story.
Got stolen? Who steals a dog? What?
Yeah.
That's terrible.
It was terrible, and I looked and I never found her, and hopefully she ended up okay because I've never seen her since.
Wow, I feel there's like we should all of a sudden right now turn into a true crime podcast and get to the bottom of who's stealing dogs off porches.
Yeah,
that's terrible.
2 weeks later, it was really weird. They planted her collar back on the porch, like someone was messing with me. So yeah, I don't know what happened with my dog, but I definitely have like a deep love of dogs. But ever since that situation with dogs, I've been very cautious with getting another one.
I can imagine, and it's also like a case of it's not just someone stolen your PlayStation. This is a living being who you love. You treat it like a child, so you don't just replace it a week later. Oh, well, I'll get another one. It's that emotional thing. That's horrible, Dwayne.
I haven't been able to get a dog since. So my dog name was Maya. I always show people's pictures of her, and it seems like I'm showing them a dead dog. But it just happened. I was taking a shower, came out the shower. I had the dog out. We did the routine every morning, and I just got back, and she wasn't there. I went to the animal shelter, checked around. Never ever end up finding the dog. The dog was well taken care of, collared, groomed. So I don't know. That's
if we can put anything into the universe out right now, and people are listening, watching, or anything, and we can find Maya, that's the goal right now. I think. But that's
Jack Russell Terrier.
Yeah, damn! I didn't know that was a thing that people were stealing dogs. That's horrible.
I told you about America. America is a very different place.
Yes, I can see that. All right. Note to self now that I'm in America, don't get a dog. At least don't put it on my porch.
Yeah, don't leave your dog unattended if you get a dog, unfortunately. Don't do that.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. I want to end this on a positive note. So let's get back to FIFA. How are you at FIFA? People are playing you online. Are you kicking their ass?
I'm really good at FIFA.
You're good? Okay.
I'm usually playing seasons, Division 1. Still use PSG after Mbappe left because everyone says I was bandwagon, and so I don't want to hear it anymore. And I just love scoring goals. That's what I do. Score goals.
That's what you want to do. Do you rage quit much? Are you one of these people if all of a sudden you're losing?
I don't like people seeing their highlights after I lost. I'm not going to give you that satisfaction. If you beat me before it gets to the screen, I'm going to be gone.
Yep. Okay. All right. Yeah. The only time I used to play online, that wouldn't because I was shit.
What do you use when you play right now? I'm interested to know everyone.
I'm Manchester United. I've been since the 90s.
Manager, huh? How you feeling?
Yeah. We can't do any worse, can we? We say that every season. So, hey, again, I grew up when we were winning. That's why I went for them as a kid and didn't expect us to, 20 years later suck. So, if you're a Manchester City supporter, get used to this in 20 years' time. You're going to suck once you stop bribing and paying for your success. So that's all I'll say. Dwayne, before we let you go, if people want to follow your journey of everything going forward, Instagram, social media, where can people stay up to date with what you've got going on in your life?
They can find me on Instagram at B1GPockets, on Twitter, Duan Asemota with 2 A's. And anything else, you can just Google me. I have bios on Athletics Canada, Team Canada. You can watch my race on YouTube. Just search my name and the thing and put men's 100 meter as well.
Beautiful. Dwayne, this has been an absolute pleasure, mate. We really appreciate your time. Best of luck. And we're going to get you back on again in the future. LA gold medalist, Brisbane gold medalist, come into our own backyard. Keep going, my friend, because multiple gold medals are in your future. I'm calling it now.
All right. I love to hear. I hope I can add something new to the wall.